The HOA cops showed up at my grandpa's house that morning. Badges on their chest, fake smiles on their faces. They weren't police, but they acted like they owned the whole street. They told him he was under arrest for breaking community law. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Phones were recording. And my grandpa just stood there, silent. They didn't know what he was hiding behind his back. They didn't know what was about to happen next. And when they finally saw it, everything changed. Forever. Welcome back to HOA Secrets, where we uncover the strangest, the darkest, and the most unbelievable stories from behind the picket fences of suburbia. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Dallas, Texas, a place that looks normal from the outside. Fresh-cut lawns, shiny mailboxes, friendly waves. But trust me, behind the rules and the smiles, there's another world. A world where the HOA tries to control everything. And today's story is about the morning they tried to arrest my grandpa. But they didn't know. The old Colt in his hands was still very much alive. The morning sun was sharp on the street, too bright, almost mocking what was about to happen. I remember standing by the window, coffee still warm in my hand, watching two men in dark vests walk up my driveway. Big white letters across their chests said, HOA, not police, not sheriff, not any real law. Just three bold letters, like they gave them the right to own us. I froze when I saw them stop in front of my grandpa's house. They didn't knock politely. They didn't smile. One of them slammed his fist on the door so hard the windows rattled. My grandpa, he wasn't the kind of man to get rattled. He'd lived through wars, storms, and enough HOA meetings to know the real enemy wasn't weather. It was neighbors with clipboards. He stepped outside slow, calm, in his red shirt tucked neat into khakis, like it was any normal morning, like nothing could touch him. The taller officer spoke first. Sir, you are under arrest for repeated violations of community law. His voice was sharp, rehearsed, like he had practiced in the mirror. Behind him, the other one rested his hand on the grip of his holster, not even trying to hide the act. I felt my throat go dry. Arrest? HOA? This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the neighbors started appearing, blinds shifting, cameras raised, like a show was starting, like this was free entertainment on a quiet Tuesday morning. Grandpa didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just stood there, hands behind his back, as if he had been expecting them. The shorter officer barked again. Step off the porch, sir. Drop your weapon. Weapon? I leaned forward against the glass, heart pounding. What weapon? I couldn't see anything. His hands were hidden, clasped together at the small of his back, and then it hit me. I knew that stance. I had seen it before on nights when Grandpa told stories of the old days, when he'd show me the heavy Colt he kept wrapped in an oilcloth under his bed. The same Colt he swore still worked. Even though it was older than him, the HOA cops didn't know what they were asking for. They thought they were in control. But in that silence, in that calm, I saw something different in my grandpa's eyes. Not fear, not anger, but patience. Like a chess player waiting for the other side to make their mistake. The neighbors started whispering louder. Phones zoomed in. Every eye on the block was fixed on that porch. The taller officer raised his voice. You are resisting HOA law. Step down now or face consequences. Grandpa tilted his head, slightly, and then he smiled. Not wide, not mocking, but a small, sharp smile. The kind that says, you don't know what you've just walked into. The silence stretched thin. Even the birds stopped. It was like the whole street was holding its breath. And me? I couldn't move. My body pressed against the window frame, heart hammering, waiting for something, anything to break the tension. The officer's hand twitched. The grip on his fake badge shifted. The other one flexed his jaw, sweat starting to run down his temple. They wanted to act tough, but in front of an old man in a red shirt, they looked small, shaky, desperate. Grandpa finally spoke. His voice was low, steady. You boys sure you want to play this game? The words hung in the air, sharp, dangerous. Not loud, but heavy enough to make the taller one step back half an inch. The neighbors gasped. Phones caught every second, and me. I couldn't stop staring at his hands, hidden behind his back. Because I knew what rested there. And I knew, the second he showed it, nothing in our neighborhood would ever be the same. The street felt frozen. Every sound, gone. Only the buzzing in my ears and the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Grandpa didn't move, not an inch. He just kept that same calm stance. Hands still hidden behind his back, and the fake cops kept shouting like their voices would make him obey. "Drop the weapon, sir. Step down now. HOA enforcement has authority here." Authority? Those words rang in my head. What authority? They had no right, no law behind them. Just a title, a vest, and an ego the size of Texas. But here's the thing about my grandpa. He wasn't scared of titles, not generals, not bosses, and definitely not two wannabe cops from the neighborhood board. The taller one took a step closer, his gun raised, finger trembling on the trigger, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't ready to pull it. He wanted the show, not the fight. Grandpa's lips twitched again, that half smile that made everyone uneasy. Then he spoke, slow, measured, each word heavy as stone. "You boys ever see what a real weapon looks like?" The crowd gasped. The shorter officer stiffened, his hand flying back to his holster. Neighbors whispered louder. Phones zoomed closer. And me? I pressed harder against the glass, heart racing so fast I thought it might break through my chest. Grandpa's hands shifted. The sunlight caught the edge of something dark, metallic. And there it was. The Colt. Old. Heavy. With scratches from a lifetime ago. But still deadly, still powerful. Still his. The officers froze. Their confidence drained in a second. What had looked like a routine act of intimidation turned into a standoff they never expected. The taller one barked, voice cracking now. "Put it down! Put it down, right now!" Grandpa tilted his head, his voice calm. "You first." Silence again. A silence so deep it rang in my ears. The neighbors clutched their phones tighter. Some mouths dropped open. One old lady whispered, "Lord have mercy," under her breath. The HOA cops didn't know what to do. Their little play had gone off script. And Grandpa had just stolen the scene. The shorter one muttered to his partner, "Man, he's serious." His voice shook, like he wanted to be anywhere else but here. The taller one hissed back, "Stay focused. He can't do anything. He's bluffing." But they didn't know him. They didn't know the Colt, and they sure didn't know what kind of man they were facing. Grandpa raised the pistol slightly, not pointing, just letting them see it clear in the sunlight. The black steel gleamed, the kind of gleam that made even liars shut up real quick. "You came to my house with fake badges, fake laws, and fake power," he said. "Now you stand here, asking me to bow to it. Tell me, why should I?" The taller officer tried to steady himself. "Because we are a HOA security, and you broke the rules." Grandpa chuckled, not loud, not mocking, just a low laugh that carried more weight than any shout. "Rules," he said. But they didn't know him. They didn't know the Colt, and they sure didn't know what kind of man they were facing. Grandpa raised the pistol slightly, not pointing, just letting them see it clear in the sunlight. The black steel gleamed, the kind of gleam that made even liars shut up real quick. "You came to my house with fake badges, fake laws, and fake power," he said. "Now you stand here, asking me to bow to it. Tell me, why should I?" The taller officer tried to steady himself. "Because we are HOA security, and you broke the rules." Grandpa chuckled, not loud, not mocking, just a low laugh that carried more weight than any shout. "Rules?" he said. "Let me tell you something, son. I was fighting men with real guns before you were even born. And you want to talk to me about grass height?" The words cut deep. I saw the taller one's jaw tighten, his pride wounded in front of the whole street. He tried again. "This is your last warning." But Grandpa stepped forward once, one slow, deliberate step, and it was enough to make both officers flinch back. The crowd gasped again. Neighbors whispered like they were watching a live movie. Except this wasn't a movie. This was my grandpa, in real life. Standing against the entire HOA circus, my legs shook as I stood at the window. I wanted to run out, to stop it. But something in me held back. Something told me. This was his fight, and I had to let it play out. The taller officer's voice broke. "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have to... To what?" Grandpa cut in. "To fine me? To write a letter? To wave your little badges and hope I get scared?" His voice grew sharper now. "Tell me, which one of you even knows how to use that gun you're holding?" The taller one's hands shook harder. The barrel wavered, like it was too heavy for him, and the shorter one, his hand never even drew from the holster. He just stood frozen, eyes darting to the crowd, looking for an escape. Grandpa's words sliced again. "See, I know a real fight when I see one. And this, boys, this isn't it." He lowered the Colt slightly, not surrendering, just showing them he wasn't afraid, not of them, not of their fake law, not of anything. The crowd murmured louder. Some neighbors cheered quietly. Others gasped in disbelief. For the first time, the mighty HOA cops looked small, weak, exposed. And then came the moment I'll never forget. Grandpa leaned forward just a little. His eyes locked on theirs, and he whispered, "So, what's it gonna be?" The taller one's face turned pale. His gun lowered an inch, then another, until it pointed uselessly at the ground. The shorter one stepped back altogether, and just like that, the scene flipped. The predators became prey. The hunters hunted. The whole street saw it. Phones captured every second, and the HOA cops. They had nothing left. One muttered something about misunderstanding. The other nodded fast, too fast. And then, they started backing away, step by step, until they were off the porch, off the driveway, and halfway down the street. Grandpa never chased, never rushed. He just stood there, holding the Colt steady, watching them retreat like cowards. When they finally turned the corner and vanished, he lowered the pistol, tucked it behind him, and looked up at the neighbors still staring. "Show's over," he said, and just like that, he walked back inside. I stayed frozen by the window, breathless. Not sure if I had just witnessed bravery, madness, or both, because in that moment, one thing was certain. The HOA would never see my grandpa the same way again. The next morning, the street didn't feel the same anymore. It wasn't quiet, not really. It was heavy, like the air itself carried the weight of what had happened on my grandpa's porch. Neighbors walked slower, eyes darting to his house like it was now some kind of landmark. Some whispered as they passed. Others shook their heads, pretending nothing had changed. But their voices told a different story. The HOA had been embarrassed, humiliated, and that's not something petty people forget easily. I saw Mrs. Connors from across the street standing by her mailbox, phone to her ear, whispering fast. Her eyes kept flicking toward our porch. She wasn't talking about her gardenias. Not this time. She was telling someone what she saw, maybe retelling it for the 10th time since sunrise. By noon, I heard 2 landscapers laughing by the corner. "Man, old dude pulled a gun on them? That's wild." The other one shook his head. "They won't let that slide, trust me." And he was right. The HOA wasn't just going to fade into the background and pretend it never happened. No. This was war now. But a different kind of war. The kind fought with paper, with notes on doors, with fines that stack like bricks until you can't breathe under the weight. I sat with my grandpa at the kitchen table, the old Colt resting in its cloth on the counter, like a guest that had finally earned its place again. He sipped his coffee slow, calm, as if nothing in the world could rattle him. "Grandpa," I said softly, "you think they'll come back?" He looked up, eyes sharp, steady. "Son, people like that never go away. They don't forgive. They plot." And he was right. That very evening, a letter slid under the door. The envelope was crisp, the seal official-looking, but the words inside, they were venom, violation. Notice, multiple offenses. Lawn height exceeded 4 inches. Trash cans visible from street after collection. Unauthorized modification to exterior property. Porch light bulb not HOA approved. 3 fines, stacked neatly. 3 rules, none that mattered. 3 reminders that this wasn't over. Grandpa read the letter once, twice, and then he folded it slowly, laid it flat on the table, and laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was quiet, sharp, the kind that cut deeper than any shout. "They think this is a fight I can't win," he said, "but they forgot. I don't play by their script. The next day, the whispers spread wider. At the corner coffee shop, I overheard two men debating it. HOA can't act like that. They're not cops. Yeah, but he pulled a gun. That's dangerous. Dangerous? Man, he's a hero. Lines were drawn. Neighbors choosing sides. Some feared what Grandpa had done. Others admired it, secretly wishing they had the courage to stand up like that. By evening, our street had split into camps, the loyalists, who defended the HOA no matter what, and the rebels, who whispered their support for Grandpa when no one else was listening. But the HOA board? They weren't whispering, they were planning. That Friday night, a notice appeared on the neighborhood bulletin board by the park. Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance mandatory. The words were bold, the message was clear. They wanted power back, and they wanted everyone to watch them take it. Grandpa wasn't fazed. He read the notice, tossed it aside. Let them talk, he said. They've already lost the street. But I wasn't so sure, because power isn't about truth in places like this. It's about control. And the HOA still had plenty of that. At the meeting, the clubhouse was packed, folding chairs lined up in neat rows. The smell of stale coffee and fresh paper everywhere. The president of the HOA, Mrs. Wilkins, stood at the front, her smile saint, retched wide, but her eyes were knives. Neighbors, she began, her voice sweet and sharp all at once. We've had an incident. Murmurs filled the room. Phones buzzed quietly. Eyes darted toward me and my grandpa in the back row. She continued. Certain individuals believe they are above the rules, above the community we all work so hard to protect. Her words dripped with venom. She never said his name, but everyone knew who she meant. And while we value safety, she went on, it is unacceptable for anyone to threaten the lives of HOA officers who are simply doing their duty. Gasps, whispers, murmurs. The story was being twisted right in front of us. Grandpa sat silent, his hands folded in his lap. But I could see the fire in his eyes, a fire that told me he wasn't done yet. Mrs. Wilkins raised a stack of papers high. From this day forward, any homeowner who threatens HOA authority will face maximum penalties, including property liens and legal action. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some booed, some just sat in stunned silence. I glanced at Grandpa. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't break. And then, quietly, he stood up. The room hushed instantly. All eyes turned, phones lifted higher. Everyone waited. He walked slowly to the front, his footsteps echoing against the tile, until he stood face to face with the president, and then he said, calm and low, "Ma'am, with all due respect, you can fine me, you can threaten me, you can twist every word you want, but you can't scare me." The room gasped. Mrs. Wilkins' smile faltered, just for a moment. Her eyes narrowed, like daggers trying to cut him down where he stood. But he didn't stop. This community was built by people, not by your rules, not by your petty power trips. And no matter what paper you wave, you'll never own us. The silence that followed was heavy, and in that silence, I realized something. The HOA wasn't as strong as they wanted us to believe, because for the first time, someone had spoken back, loud enough, clear enough, that even the people who feared them felt a spark of courage inside. Grandpa turned, walked back to his seat, and the meeting ended in chaos. Some neighbors clapped quietly, some stormed out in anger, and some just stared at him in awe. That night, the whispers grew louder, the story spread faster, and the line between HOA control and neighborhood rebellion had never been clearer. The night after the meeting, the neighborhood felt different. The streets were the same, the houses were the same, but the way people looked at us had changed. Some nodded when they passed our porch, quiet respect in their eyes. Others turned their faces away, whispering behind clipped hedges. It was clear now. Our house had become the center of something bigger. This wasn't just about grass, or trash cans, or light bulbs. This was about control and resistance. Grandpa didn't flinch. He sat on the porch swing like he always did, sipping his coffee, staring out at the road as if daring anyone to walk up again, but I could feel it, the tension crawling under the skin of every neighbor on our block. The HOA wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, another letter. This one thicker, folded in 3 crisp pages. Final warning, it said on top. Fines listed down the side like a grocery list. 1 for improper lawn maintenance, 1 for unapproved mailbox paint color, 1 for failure to comply with HOA safety inspection. It was endless, a list so long it almost felt like a joke. Grandpa read every line slowly, and then he chuckled. That same low laugh that meant trouble was brewing. "Son," he said, sliding the letter across the table. "They think they've trapped me, but they've only given me the map." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, voice low, sharp. "They want me to follow their rules. Fine, I'll follow them better than they ever imagine. Ned, I'll choke them with their own words." I didn't understand right away, but by noon, I saw the plan unfolding. Grandpa was out on the lawn, measuring every blade of grass with an old wooden ruler, trimming each edge so perfect you could run a level across it. Neighbors stopped to watch, whispering at the sight. Some laughed, others looked nervous, but Grandpa didn't care. By the afternoon, he had repainted the mailbox. The exact shade listed in the HOA handbook. Not one shade lighter, not one shade darker. He even took photos, printed them, and taped them inside the box with a note. Color code approved by manufacturer. That night, he replaced the porch light, but not just any light. The exact bulb listed in the HOA guidelines, with receipts stapled to the fixture like evidence at a crime scene. It was petty, meticulous, and perfect, and the message was clear. He would obey, to the letter. But in doing so, he would mock every rule they clung to. The next HOA inspection didn't go the way they expected. 3 board members showed up, clipboards in hand. They circled the house like vultures, but every note they wrote was crushed by the evidence Grandpa had waiting. Grass length, 3.5 inches, measured and photographed. Mailbox, approved color, receipt attached. Porch light, regulation bulb, proof provided. They tried. Oh, they tried to find cracks, but Grandpa had filled every one before they could open their mouths. The neighbors laughed as the inspectors walked away empty-handed, even the ones who once stood with the HOA. Because deep down, everyone loves watching power trip over its own feet. But the HOA wasn't just going to walk away, not now. Not after being embarrassed twice in front of the whole neighborhood. They changed tactics. The passive-aggressive war began. Notes appeared on our door. Anonymous letters scribbled in messy handwriting. "Your trash cans are too close to the sidewalk. Your wind chime is too loud. Your fence looks sus. Picious." Each note more ridiculous than the last. Each one signed only with the words, "Concerned neighbor." But we knew who it was. We all knew. Grandpa never got angry. He never shouted. He just smiled, folded the notes neatly, and tucked them into a shoebox he kept under the porch swing. One day, I asked him why he kept them. He leaned back, eyes glinting. "Because, son, one day I'll show them their own words, and they'll wish they never wrote them." The whispers grew louder in the neighborhood. Some said the HOA was plotting something big. Others said Grandpa had already won. The line between sides wasn't just quiet now. It was visible. I saw Mr. Clark from down the street stop by our porch one evening. He leaned in close to Grandpa and whispered, "About time someone stood up to them." Then he walked away without another word. A week later, Mrs. Hernandez brought over a pie. She said it was for the trouble, but her smile said more. She wanted to show support without putting it in writing. And just like that, Grandpa wasn't alone anymore. He had started something, a spark, a quiet rebellion. But the HOA, they weren't blind. They saw the shift. They saw the respect building around him. And that scared them more than the Colt ever did. Because guns make noise, but influence makes cracks that can split a whole community apart, so they planned their next move, and we felt it coming. Like a storm brewing over the rooftops. One night, a new notice hit every door in the neighborhood. New HOA security program, volunteers needed. It was their way of taking back control, arming themselves with more fake cops, more vests, more intimidation. The next morning I found Grandpa on the porch again. Colt resting on the table this time. Not hidden, not subtle. He looked at me with that same calm fire. They think more men in vests will scare me. But son, you can't scare a man who's already faced worse. And he was right. Because deep down, I knew something big was coming. A clash bigger than fines, bigger than notes, bigger than all the petty rules. The HOA wanted war, and Grandpa was ready to give it to them. The first night of the new HOA security program was almost laughable. I heard them before I saw them. Heavy boots on the pavement, walkie-talkies buzzing, the sound of cheap flashlights clicking on and off, 3 men in navy vests, with the same big white letters across the front. HOA. They moved down the street like they were hunting something. Except there was nothing to hunt, just kids' bikes tipped on lawns, sprinklers hissing in the dark, and a few porch lights glowing soft against the night. But still, they walked in formation, like soldiers on patrol. Except they weren't soldiers. They were neighbors, accountants, insurance clerks, men who spent their mornings at cubicles and now strutted down the street like they owned it. I sat on the porch with my grandpa, the old swing creaking under us, his Colt resting quietly on the table between his coffee mug and the ashtray. He didn't hold it. He didn't need to. Its presence was enough. The patrol slowed as they reached our house. One of them shined a flashlight across the yard, pausing on the grass. The mailbox. The windows. Then the beam landed on us, 2 shadows sitting still in the swing. Watching. The man coughed. "Evening, sir," he called out, his voice tight, forced. Grandpa didn't answer. He just rocked back once. The chain groaning low. The flashlight shook slightly before moving on. They passed without stopping. But the message was clear. They wanted us to know they were watching. They wanted us to feel it. Grandpa leaned toward me, his voice low. "See, son, intimidation only works if you let it in." But the HOA didn't stop at patrols. Oh no. They turned up the game. The next morning, another letter taped to our door. This one wasn't a fine. It wasn't even official. It was just one line scrawled in black marker. "We're not done." I felt a shiver crawl up my neck. It wasn't a rule anymore. It was a threat. Grandpa read it, chuckled, and folded it into his shoebox with the rest of the notes. "Good," he muttered. "Let them dig their own grave." That night, we struck back, not with guns, not with threats, but with something far worse for people like them. Embarrassment. Grandpa typed a letter on his old typewriter, every word sharp, every sentence dripping with sarcasm. "Dear concerned HOA security, thank you for your nightly patrol. The neighborhood truly sleeps better knowing 3 middle-aged men in sneakers are out there defending us from trash cans and lawn clippings. Please remember to hydrate." He printed 10 copies, and at midnight, we slipped them into mailboxes up and down the street. By morning, the block was buzzing. Some laughed out loud as they read it on their driveways. Others snapped photos and sent them to friends. And the patrolmen? They turned red as fire hydrants when they saw neighbors grinning at them. The HOA called it defamation. Grandpa called it free speech. And the neighborhood called it the funniest thing they'd ever seen. But things didn't stop there. The HOA doubled their patrols, 2 groups now, walking opposite ends of the street, walkie-talkies crackling louder, flashlights flashing into backyards, voices barking rules in the dark. One night, I heard them outside again. This time, they stopped at our fence, voices hushed but sharp. "Man, he can't keep this up forever." "Yeah, sooner or later, he's gonna slip." Or, "We make him slip." My blood ran cold. I leaned closer against the window, trying to hear more, but Grandpa tapped the glass lightly. "Let them talk," he whispered. "Words are cheap." But the next day, he struck again. This time with signs, big, bold wooden signs he staked into the front yard, each one painted with simple black letters. HOA equals harassment on arrival. Fake cops patrol here. Wave and smile. Warning, grass may cause HOA heart attack. The street erupted in laughter. Cars slowed to take photos. Teenagers shared them online, and for the first time, the HOA's power became a punchline. The patrolmen tried to look serious, striding past the signs at night with their flashlights. But every time they did, a neighbor chuckled louder, and the sound cut deeper than any Colt ever could. But the HOA board wasn't laughing. At the next meeting, Mrs. Wilkins' voice cracked with fury. "This behavior is unacceptable. These acts are disruptive to the harmony of our community. He is a danger to us all." Her words bounced off the walls, But the laughter outside drowned her out, because power doesn't just vanish when someone resists it. It collapses when people stop believing in it. And slowly, one by one, the neighborhood was losing faith in the board. But intimidation has a way of shifting when it fails. And soon, the notes turned darker. One morning, taped to the mailbox. Watch yourself at night. Another evening, tucked under the porch swing. Accidents happen. I felt the fear rise again, this time stronger. This wasn't just pettiness anymore. This was venom. But Grandpa, he didn't flinch. He took the notes, read them once, and then pinned them to the signs in the front yard, displayed for everyone to see, letting the whole neighborhood know exactly what kind of cowards we were dealing with. And the best part? It worked. Because now, the HOA wasn't just fighting him. They were fighting their own reputation. Neighbors whispered louder now. Did you see the threats? Unbelievable. Those people have lost it. The patrols kept marching, but their eyes darted more, their shoulders hunched lower, and their voices cracked thinner, because they knew. The more they tried to intimidate, the more Grandpa made them look like fools. And me? I sat on that porch every night, the Colt glinting in the lamplight, the shoebox of notes growing fatter under, or the swing, watching as the mighty HOA power crumbled, not with a bang, but with laughter. The night it happened, the air was heavy, not the soft weight of summer heat, not the quiet hum of sprinklers and crickets. This was different. This was thick, sharp, like the whole street knew something was about to snap. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard it, the sound of boots on gravel. Not steady, but quick, angry. And then, the clatter of something against our fence. I sat up fast, heart racing. The porch light spilled across the yard. And there they were, 3 men in those navy vests again. Flashlights off this time, moving low, moving quiet. But this wasn't a patrol. This wasn't a show. This was something else. Grandpa was already awake. He opened the front door before I could even stand. The Colt rested at his side, not hidden, not flashy, just there, like it had been waiting. What do you want? His voice cut through the night, sharp as a blade. The men froze. One of them whispered something, but the others shoved him forward. He cleared his throat. You're a danger to this community. You need to stop, or else. Or else those words hung in the air like smoke. Grandpa stepped out onto the porch. The wood creaked under his boots. The swing swayed slightly behind him. He didn't raise the Colt. He didn't have to. His presence alone was heavier than any bullet. Or else what? He asked. Calm. Steady. The tallest one shifted his weight. His hand brushed the crowbar hanging at his side. Not a clipboard this time. Not a fine. Not a letter. A weapon. My chest tightened. This wasn't petty anymore. This wasn't games. This was violence, waiting to be unleashed. The shorter man sneered. You think you're untouchable, but accidents happen. Fences break, houses burn. The words hit me like ice. They weren't hiding anymore. They were threatening him. Threatening us. Grandpa chuckled, that same low laugh. But this time, it was colder. You boys really want to cross that line? The tall one's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, crowbar glinting in the porch light. But before he could move again, a voice rang out from across the street. Hey! Mr. Clark, the neighbor who once whispered his support, now standing in his driveway with a baseball bat in his hands, behind him. Porch lights flicked on, doors creaked open. Other neighbors stepped out, phones raised. Recording, watching, the 3 HOA men froze. Their plan had cracked. What was supposed to be quiet intimidation was now a stage show in front of the entire block. Grandpa raised the Colt slightly, not pointing, just enough to remind them of reality. You brought tools. I brought history. Which one do you think lasts longer? The tall man's crowbar shook, the shorter one's sneer collapsed into a twitch, and the third man, silent until now, muttered, We shouldn't be here. The crowd murmured louder, voices rose. Go home. Shame. Leave him alone. The 3 men looked at each other, panic replacing their swagger. They backed away slowly, step by step. Until they reached the end of the driveway, Grandpa never lowered the Colt, not until they turned. Not until they slipped back into the shadows and vanished down the street. The neighbors stayed outside longer than usual that night. Some clapped quietly, some just shook their heads in disbelief. But everyone felt it. The line had been crossed. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about fear and defiance. I turned to Grandpa, my voice trembling. "They're not going to stop, are they?" He looked at me, his eyes steady. "No, son, they won't stop. Not until someone makes them." The next morning, the block was alive with whispers. Videos of the confrontation spread faster than wildfire. Clips of the crowbar, clips of Grandpa's Colt, clips of neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder in the night. Some called him a hero, some called him reckless. But one thing was certain, the HOA had lost control of the story. Mrs. Wilkins tried to spin it. Her letter arrived at every house the next day. "Do not be deceived by dangerous individuals spreading fear and lies. The HOA Security Patrol is here to protect you." But the video said otherwise. The people had seen the truth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Still, I knew this wasn't over. The HOA was wounded, humiliated, desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Grandpa sat on the porch again that evening, Colt resting on the table, shoebox of notes at his feet. He stared out at the street, the same calm fire in his eyes. "They think I'm the problem," he muttered. "But the real problem is, I'm not alone anymore." And he was right, because one by one, neighbors started stopping by. Mr. Clark leaned on the porch rail. "You need me. I'm here." Mrs. Hernandez dropped off another pie, this time with a quiet whisper, "They can't scare us all." Even the teenagers who once laughed from afar now lingered by the fence, wide-eyed, soaking in every word Grandpa said. He had become more than a man with a Colt. He had become a symbol, and symbols are far harder to kill than people. That night, I lay awake listening to the crickets, the hum of sprinklers, the faint echo of boots that no longer felt as strong as before. And I realized the battle had shifted again. The HOA had tried intimidation. They had tried violence, and both had backfired. But what would they try next, and how far were they willing to go? Before the whole neighborhood turned against them completely. The final strike came on a Sunday morning. The sun was barely up. The street was quiet, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted through the air. But peace never lasts long here, not under the HOA. I was pouring coffee when I heard it, the sound of engines, more than one. I looked out the window and froze. 3 black SUVs crawled down the street, slow, deliberate. Not police, not sheriff. HOA, their new security force stepping out in numbers. 6 men this time, all in matching navy vests, all with the same 3 bold letters across their chest. HOA. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Some stepped onto porches. Phones already in hand. Everyone knew what was coming, the final showdown. Grandpa stood on the porch before I could even call his name. His red shirt tucked in neat, his hands steady as ever, the Colt resting quiet in his grip. The men spread out across the lawn. Their leader, tall, broad-shouldered, stepped forward. His voice carried sharp in the morning air. "This ends today." Grandpa didn't flinch, he didn't blink, he just tilted his head, like a man humoring a child. "Funny," he said softly. "That's exactly what I was thinking." The crowd grew thicker. Neighbors gathered at the edge of their driveways. Phones raised higher. The HOA wanted a show, and they were about to get one. The leader barked, "You've broken every rule in the book. You've mocked this community. You've threatened lives." Grandpa chuckled low. "The only thing I've threatened is your pride." The man's face darkened. He waved his hand and 2 others stepped forward. But before they could open their mouths, a voice cut through the air. It wasn't Grandpa. It was Mrs. Hernandez, standing at her porch in her apron, pie dish still in her hand. "Leave him alone!" she shouted. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and then more voices joined. "Yeah, back off." "He's not the cry." "Min'll hear! You're the one scaring everyone!" The HOA men shifted uncomfortably, their authority crumbling in real time. The leader's jaw clenched. "This man is dangerous," he barked. But Grandpa raised the Colt slightly, the sunlight catching the steel. "Dangerous?" he asked. No, I'm prepared. There's a difference. The silence was sharp, the whole block holding its breath. The leader sneered. You pull that trigger, and you'll regret it. Grandpa stepped forward one slow pace, his voice dropped low, sharp as a knife. Son, I regret a lot of things in my life, but standing up to bullies like you, that will never be one of them. The crowd erupted, some cheered, some gasped. Phones flashed like fireworks. And in that moment, the HOA lost, not because of the Colt, not because of Grandpa's words, but because the neighborhood finally stood behind him. Mr. Clark stepped forward, bat in hand. Behind him, two teenagers rolled their bikes into the street, blocking the SUVs. Others joined, one by one, until a wall of neighbors stood between the HOA and Grandpa's porch. The leader's face went pale. He looked around, saw the cameras, the crowd, the sheer force of resistance, and he knew they had lost control. Fall back, he muttered, but his men hesitated. Fall back, he barked louder. One by one, the navy vests retreated, their boots heavy on the pavement. Their shoulders slumped under the weight of defeat. The SUVs roared back to life, engines humming as they rolled out of the cul-de-sac, the sound fading into the distance, leaving only silence in their wake. Grandpa lowered the Colt, not in triumph, not in mockery, but in quiet finality, like a man closing the last page of a long book. He turned to the neighbors, his voice calm. You see, they only have power if you give it to them. The crowd clapped, some cheered, others simply nodded, their faces lit with something new. Respect, courage, freedom. That night, the HOA posted one last letter, not on our door, not in our mailbox, but on the bulletin board at the park. Effective immediately, the HOA security program is disbanded. All board members have resigned. A new election will be scheduled. The paper fluttered in the wind, neighbors crowded around it, snapping photos, whispering in awe. The empire had crumbled, the rulers had fled. And all it took was one old man who refused to bow. I sat with Grandpa on the porch again that evening. The swing creaked, the crickets sang, the Colt rested on the table, quiet now, like it too had earned its peace. He sipped his coffee slow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Bye. I know, son, he said softly. Sometimes, the best weapon isn't the one in your hand. It's the truth everyone can see with their own eyes. I nodded, staring out at the street, the same street that once bowed to the HOA, now alive with laughter, freedom, and something it hadn't felt in years, relief. And as the night settled, I realized something. The story wasn't just about Grandpa, it was about all of us, how far we let petty power go, and what happens when one person finally says, enough.